She came storming up our porch like she owned the whole mountain, waving papers in her hand and yelling, "You can't live here! This cabin is not authorized!" I didn't even get the chance to open my mouth before she pointed her finger at me and barked, "Step aside! I'm inspecting this property!" Her voice was so loud it startled my little boy inside the cabin. My wife stood up from the chair slowly, calm but sharp, and asked, "Who exactly gave you the right to barge into our home?" Karen smirked, puffed up like she was some officer, and said, "The HOA rules apply here. You people don't even belong on this land." For a moment, I felt the rage boil in my chest, but I bit my tongue because my wife had already reached into her bag. Karen thought she had us cornered, her eyes scanning around like she was about to call backup. But then my wife pulled out a folded document and laid it flat on the table. The air shifted instantly. Karen leaned in, expecting some flimsy excuse, but froze when she saw the bold header, "State Court Warrant of Ownership." My wife didn't raise her voice. She just whispered, "Care to explain why you're trespassing on land the court gave to me?" Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. She clutched her fake papers tighter, her face draining of color. Karen tried to laugh it off, but her voice cracked. These documents don't matter. The HOA has authority here, and if you don't comply, I'll have you arrested." She pulled out her phone like she was dialing some secret hotline, but I noticed her thumb wasn't moving at all. She was bluffing. My wife leaned forward, her tone colder this time. "Call whoever you want, but the sheriff signed this warrant himself. Do you really want me to make that call instead?" The silence stretched. Karen's fake confidence wavered as her eyes darted to the woods around us, probably looking for a way out without losing face. My son peeked out from the doorway, clutching his toy truck, and whispered, "Daddy, is that lady going to take our house?" My chest tightened, but I forced a steady smile and said loud enough for Karen to hear, "No one is taking what belongs to us." Karen snapped, her voice turning shrill. "This cabin is not approved by the HOA. I'll bring the whole board here, and you'll regret this." She stomped down the steps, still clutching her papers like a shield, but her walk wasn't steady anymore. It was nervous, shaky, almost desperate. I watched her disappear down the dirt road, dust swirling behind her car. My wife folded the warrant back into her bag, but I could see her jaw tighten. "She's not done," she said quietly, and I knew she was right. Karen wasn't the type to back off after being humiliated. She would come back, and next time, she wouldn't come alone. It didn't take long. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, the sound of engines echoed through the valley. I stepped out onto the porch, coffee still in my hand, and saw 3 SUVs crawling up the dirt road. My stomach sank as I recognized Karen in the lead vehicle, sitting tall like some self-appointed general. This time she wasn't alone. 4 men in matching jackets got out with her, clipboards in hand, trying hard to look official. Karen smirked as if she'd already won. "Step aside," she shouted. "These inspectors are here to shut this place down." I stayed calm, but inside I was boiling. The men followed Karen up the porch, and one of them started snapping pictures of our cabin. My son cried from inside, and that sound cut deeper than anything Karen could say. My wife moved beside me, her hand brushing against mine, a silent reminder, "Stay steady." Karen sneered. "This cabin violates multiple codes. We'll have it condemned by tonight." She tapped her foot impatiently, like she was daring us to resist. That's when my wife spoke, her voice sharp as glass. "You really don't know when to stop, do you?" She reached into her bag again, not for the warrant this time, but for a small black folder. Karen's smug grin flickered when she saw the gold seal on the cover. "You want to talk about codes?" my wife said, flipping it open. "Then you better start explaining why these so-called inspectors don't even have state licenses." The men froze. Karen's face drained as my wife held up the folder, proof from the county clerk's office. The inspectors looked at each other nervously, their fake authority unraveling by the second. Karen stammered, This doesn't concern you." But her voice was breaking, and she knew it. The tallest of the so-called inspectors finally spoke, his voice low but shaky. "Ma'am, we were told this was HOA property. She said she had clearance." He glanced nervously at Karen, but she snapped, "Shut up! Do your job!" That slip was all I needed. I pulled my phone from my pocket and pressed record, making sure every word and face was captured. My wife stepped forward, holding the folder higher. "You're all trespassing on private property under false pretenses. Do you know what that means? Fraud, criminal charges, jail time." Karen's composure cracked. She lunged toward my wife, trying to snatch the folder, but I stepped between them. "Careful," I warned. "Touch her and you'll be explaining that to the sheriff in handcuffs." My wife didn't even flinch. She just smiled, slow and steady, then reached into her bag one last time. This time, she pulled out the document Karen feared most. A signed warrant, stamped with the county sheriff's seal, authorizing not just ownership, but also the right to remove trespassers. Karen's knees seemed to weaken as my wife read the lines aloud. The inspectors backed away, muttering excuses, clearly realizing they'd been set up. My wife turned to them and said, "You're free to leave before the deputies arrive, but she pointed straight at Karen, is staying." Karen's eyes widened. For the first time since she barged onto our land, she looked genuinely afraid. I dialed the sheriff's number, speaker on, letting his voice fill the porch. "You still having trouble out there?" he asked. I glanced at Karen, who stood frozen, clutching her worthless papers. "Not anymore, Sheriff. I think she just realized this cabin doesn't belong to her HOA. It belongs to us." The sheriff's cruiser pulled up faster than I expected, dust rolling off the tires as he stepped out with his hand resting casually on his holster. Karen tried to regain her act, waving her papers like a lifeline. "Officer, arrest them! They're illegally occupying HOA land!" Her voice was shrill, desperate, the kind that made neighbors peek through curtains if we'd had any. But the sheriff didn't even look at her. He walked straight to me and my wife, tipped his hat, and asked calmly, "This the one causing all the trouble?" My wife handed him the warrant. He skimmed it, nodded once, then turned to Karen. "Ma'am, this property is under legal ownership of this family. That means you are trespassing. Care to explain yourself?" Karen's face twisted. "No, you don't understand. I am the HOA here. I have the authority." She waved the fake inspectors closer, but they were already halfway to their cars, wanting nothing to do with her anymore. The sheriff raised his brow. "HOA? Lady, this land isn't even zoned under any HOA jurisdiction. And impersonating inspectors? That's a felony." Karen's mouth opened, but nothing came out except a strangled sound. The sheriff gestured to his deputy, who'd arrived behind him, and said the words I'd been waiting for. "Place her under arrest." Karen shrieked as the deputy pulled out cuffs, trying to twist away. "You can't do this! I own this valley! You'll regret this!" But her voice cracked, and even she didn't sound convinced anymore. My son stepped out onto the porch, watching wide-eyed. I crouched down, ruffling his hair, and whispered so he could hear every word. "See? No one is ever going to take our home from us." He nodded, clutching his toy tighter, while behind us the sheriff's car doors slammed shut on Karen's protests. As the sheriff's cruiser rolled down the dirt road with Karen screaming in the back seat, the silence that felt almost unreal, my wife finally let out a long breath, the tension in her shoulders easing for the first time in days. But I couldn't shake the thought that it wasn't over yet. People like Karen didn't just vanish quietly. They clawed, they schemed, they tried to pull others down with them. That night, after putting our son to bed, I sat on the porch with my wife. The stars stretched across the sky, and for a moment it felt peaceful. Then my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. When I answered, a distorted voice hissed, "You think this is done? The HOA doesn't forget. We'll take everything from you." The line went dead before I could reply. I clenched my jaw, staring out into the darkness. My wife noticed the shift in my expression and asked, "What they say?" I told her the truth, but instead of fear, she smiled faintly. "Good," she whispered. "Let them try. They don't know who they're up against. The next morning, a letter slid under our cabin door. No envelope, no stamp. Just a single sheet with bold, threatening words. Vacate immediately or face consequences. My wife held it up, her eyes narrowing. They're getting desperate, she said. I nodded, already planning our next move. If Karen thought we were just some family she could bully, she was about to find out exactly how wrong she was. Because what she didn't know yet was that my wife's warrant wasn't our only weapon. We still had one card left to play, and it was bigger than anything Karen could imagine. 2 days later, the threat turned real. I woke up to the rumble of heavy machinery outside. Through the window, I saw a bulldozer crawling toward our fence line, a group of men in orange vests standing around like they had official orders. And there, in the middle of them, stood Karen, free already, her hair wild, her eyes burning with obsession. She pointed straight at our cabin and shouted, "Tear it down! They've been warned!" I stormed outside before the machine could move another inch. "Turn that engine off!" I yelled. The driver hesitated, clearly unsure. Karen shoved a clipboard at him, screaming, "Do your job! The HOA authorized this demolition!" But then my wife stepped onto the porch, calm as ever, holding a new document in her hand. Only this time, it wasn't a warrant. It was something far stronger. Her voice carried across the clearing as she said, "This isn't HOA land. This is federal conservation property under my family's deed. And here," she held the paper high, the seal glinting in the morning light, "is the federal injunction against any construction or demolition." The men froze instantly. Even the bulldozer went silent. Karen's face twisted in disbelief. "You're lying! This can't be real!" she shrieked, snatching at the paper, but my wife pulled it back before she could touch it. The lead worker stepped down from the bulldozer, took one look at the seal, and muttered, "She's right. We could get prison time for this." He dropped his clipboard, signaling his crew to back off. Karen's scream echoed through the valley, raw and furious. "No! You can't stop me! This cabin is mine! All of it is mine!" But her words sounded hollow now, powerless, because everyone could see the truth. She wasn't in charge anymore. She was just a trespasser with nothing left but her rage. Karen lunged forward like a cornered animal, but before she could get another word out, the sheriff's sirens wailed in the distance. 2 cruisers barreled up the dirt road, lights flashing. Deputies stepped out fast, their boots crunching against gravel. One of them pointed straight at Karen. "Ma'am, step away from the property. You've already violated your release order." She face collapsed into panic. "No! You don't understand! They tricked me! This is my land! I built my life around this place!" She stumbled backward, but there was nowhere left to run. The sheriff himself walked up, his voice low and final. "You've harassed this family enough. You forged documents, impersonated officials, and trespassed after being warned. It ends today." With a swift motion, he cuffed her again. This time, she didn't fight. Her screams had turned into weak sobs. As the deputies drove her away for the last time, the silence that followed was different. It wasn't tense anymore. It was clean, free. My wife took my hand and squeezed it. Our son ran out onto the porch, laughing, not even afraid this time. He waved goodbye to the sheriff's car like it was carrying away a bad dream. I looked at the cabin, our cabin, standing strong against the morning sun. Everything we fought for was still here. Our home, our land, our freedom. My wife smiled at me, her eyes fierce with pride. "They thought they could scare us out, but this is America. No one takes your home if you're willing to fight for it." I wrapped my arm around her shoulders and pulled her close. "Exactly," I said. "I didn't serve this country to be told by an HOA that I can't live on my own land." And as the sheriff's sirens faded into the hills, I knew one thing for certain. Karen was gone, and our family wasn't just safe, we had won.